Why do some beats feel boring and basic, while others feel stylish and alive? Through 15 years of producing and releasing records, I picked up lots of clever drum tricks that pro producers are using to give their beats a unique edge. So today I'm bringing you 10 tips to help your drums hit different. Let's kick off with a clever way to reshape drum hits. Take a look at the waveforms of pro drum samples and you'll find clues for tricks you can apply to your own hits. On this snare, you can see a dip in volume just after the initial transient, which gives the first part more punch and impact. Armed with this knowledge, we can stamp a similar shape on a different sound. I'll load Shaperbox and open Volume Shaper, set it to audio mode here, and the LFO resets every time the snare plays. Now I'll reduce the loop length so the waveform fills the editor, and now I'll draw in a volume dip just after the transient. Tweak the curve to get the flow and impact you want. And now this snare just feels punchier and different with this volume dip. Next, here's a drum machine clap sample. You can see multiple fins here at the start. This diffused attack is meant to emulate multiple claps stacked together. It sounds absolutely nothing like humans clapping, but it does give a synthetic clap its character. And guess what? Like before, we can apply a similar volume curve to a different sound. And you can try all different types of volume shapes to change a drum hit's dynamics and feel. And we don't have to stop at volume. Here's Time Shaper, set to audio mode, loaded on this snare. Now I can draw a sloping curve to sweep the pitch of the snare down and reshape its feel. Next, drum layering is one of the most effective ways to make custom drums that stand out and hit different. A good approach is to start with solid foundational samples. Then add character or flavour by layering a new sound that complements the original. You could layer Foley or vinyl crackle for a sampled feel. Or stack a new transient for punch. Or layer something weird, like a pitched vocal or a sound effect, for a fun, special vibe. And for style and variety, automate your layers over time. You can also layer for tonality, which brings us to the topic of resonances. A hot topic in music production is resonance suppression, especially plugins that remove resonances automatically, because resonant frequencies are evil, right? Actually, no, not quite. Here's a famous drum sample, the open hi-hat from the TR-909 drum machine. You can see several peaks sticking out. Let's boost and solo them. They sound like individual notes in a chord. Often we see resonances poking up and we feel the urge to flatten them, but if I pull out these resonances, the magic is gone. The hi-hat loses what makes it recognisable and unique. You also may have noticed resonant peaks in other drums from sample packs. These resonances add tone, vibe and character. So how can we use resonant tones to help our drums hit different and feel unique? Well, you can try adding resonance with EQ. Try boosting a super narrow bell, then sweep around to find a ringing tone that adds a nice tone to the drum hit. Or when layering drums, try blending in a tonal sound. In this track, I've layered an 808 conga tone over my other snare layers. Without this tone, the snare sounds like it's missing something. And with the conga tone, it sounds more complete, especially since the conga layer is tuned in key with the track. Now, this is absolutely guaranteed to level up your tracks by at least 137%. Go to Cableguys.com and check out our full range of plugins. There's the new Snapback instant layering effect, our flagship Shaperbox 3, and get all of these in the full Cableguys bundle, plus Halftime, Filter Shaper XL, our Curve 2 synth, and MIDI Shaper. Okay, Back to the video. Next, let's explore microgrooves. But what is a microgroove? Well, it's my completely made-up term to describe all those tiny, subtle details that bind drums together and add groove and change their feel and impact. One example is a snapback layer on a kick or snare. If you don't know what a snapback layer is, go and watch my snapback video. A reverse snapback thwip leading into a kick or snare might be super subtle. But when you remove it, the groove and the feel of the beat completely changes. Another example is using an obvious snapback layer to add suction and urgency before a transient. Again, you can use automation to add snapback layers only on certain hits and not others. And here is another example of a microgroove. You've probably come across this when using field recordings or vinyl crackle. These kinds of organic textures often contain micro events and tiny rhythms inside. Working these into a regular drum groove will not only add texture, but these events can also add subliminal rhythms that just feel unique and different. Another way to make your drums slap in a unique way is by adding a big fat dollop of stereo source. Try using a convolution reverb and especially weird impulse responses to add unique stereo content to your drums. Another trick I use for widening drums is stereo layering. Start with a drum hit that's solid and centered. Then blend in a stereo layer to add tasteful width. Next, for drums that hit different, we can't overlook the power of distortion. Slapping on a distortion plugin and cranking up the drive may get you the sound that you want. But a smarter, more flexible method is to distort only certain parts of the drum waveform. Keep the transient clean and punchy, but smash the body hard to blow out the sustain. Or do the opposite. Here in Drive Shaper, you can do this with LFO drawing or via the envelope follower. And here's another distortion trick. Accent a distortion pattern in unique ways and alter timbre over time for crunchy movement. Speaking of distortion, one of my favourite ways to make my music feel different is to make one part of my track react to another part of my track. I've covered this in videos already. One example, I like to use sub-frequencies to trigger distortion on high-frequency elements like hats or rides. Let me break down this rack I made for doing this. Here's my ride channel. The first plugin is a compressor. My bass is selected as the sidechain input, but I'm not using this for sidechain compression. Instead, I'm using the audition button to route the sub-bass signal into this channel. Then this EQ is isolating the sub-bass. Then this sub-signal is mixed in parallel with the rides. Then I'm distorting the sub-bass and rides together. And I'm high-passing out the subs from the combined signal after. So every time the bass hits, the rides go all mushy and break up. This gives a squishy, oppressive feel, exaggerating the weight of the bass in the mix. Next up, let's talk about timing. Locking all of your drums to the grid is totally valid if you want a purposely robotic feel. But because quantizing is so easy, Everyone else is doing it. For a more human feel, move your notes early or late by tiny amounts to emulate the timing inconsistencies of a real drummer. You can also use swing, aka shuffle. Swing moves every second's 16th note later in time. Just select one of your DAW's swing templates for a typical groovy feel. Or you could even add swing in real time with Time Shaper, as I showed in this video. However, swing isn't particularly unique. In fact, it's kind of cliche. If you want your grooves to feel natural and different, manual groove shifting is where it's at. I like to start with a snare and downbeat kick quantized to the grid. This anchors the rhythm, then manually move other sounds earlier for urgency and later for looseness. You can use your DAW's track delay or a delay plugin to shift sounds later. Check out artists like Jay Dilla and Burial for a masterclass in just how far off-grid you can go while still keeping it musical. Now, the drums that you choose will define the timbre, punch and feel of your track, so here's some advice on sound selection. Use only generic sounds and your beat will sound generic. If you want a stylish, unique feel, incorporate stylish, unique sounds. Every so often I get the urge to use weird, non-drum sounds as drums with the goal of making an unusual beat. Other times I'll try using regular sounds in very different ways. For example, to give these drums a unique feel, I decided to use 2 different kicks and 3 different rimshot snares. It was a weird decision, but it worked. Another thing to consider when choosing drums is juxtaposition, or put simply, how you combine and contrast different drum sounds to make a unique kit. You could use acoustic elements alongside powerful electronic hits. Or use one weird standout sound in an otherwise generic drum kit. Okay, now you've got a toolkit of techniques for unique drums, it's time to bring them all together with a clear sense of purpose. Throwing in weird or crazy drums for no reason is just weird. So define your vision. Think about the mood and energy you want to convey. Is it aggressive and punchy, laid back and groovy, or experimental and floaty? Having a clear vision or theme will guide your decisions. Now, the most powerful way to make your drums unique is by watching this video, and head to cableguys.com to check out our complete Cableguys bundle.